Yeah, Kubrick's a very fascinating character in all of this. And have any of you heard any of these pathetic, weak arguments from various NASAtologists that say it would have been easier to have gone to the moon in 1969 than to have faked it? It would be too hard to fake it, no way. A lot of them say that. There's arguments made, very passionate arguments that no, you're dumb for thinking it could be faked, it's impossible. They're trying to argue that no, moon landings were not fakeable. And that's insane because anything, and if you look at the screen, these are some examples. I think NASA spent in 1960 something, they spent like $2 million on this moon model. It's a realistic moon model. The would-be astronaut would sit in the cockpit simulator and they would see the cratered lunar surface and it'd be on a revolving conveyor belt. And this was to simulate landing on the moon. So they simulated it realistically. And my point being is that anything that can be simulated with realistic models can be faked on camera. It's that simple. So it's fakeable. And anything that can be faked in the movies can be faked in the news. It's just a matter of labeling it properly. Like before the latest Artemis mission, NASA had an animation for the Artemis rocket and its thing going to the moon. And they had to put a notice on there, animation, animation. I'm like, why are they telling us it's an animation? Well, because the general public wouldn't be able to distinguish between the animation and the quote real thing, which hadn't happened yet. So they didn't want people to think it had already happened by looking at the animation. So they had to tell them, oh, it hasn't happened yet. We are a reality impaired society. But again, anything that can be simulated with realistic models can be faked on camera, therefore can be faked in the movies, therefore can be faked on the news. They put it in the movies so that when they present it on the news, it seems believable. The movies are there to set your expectations. The movie sets your frame of reference. You could extend that to the TV, to the screen. That's what I mean when I bring up the monolith and why it's so relevant and pertinent to this and the moon fakery and 9/11 and ground zero, because the monolith represents that one screen that filters all of our perceptions, and Kubrick's monolith represents the screen in its dimensions. And if everybody's operating from that same frame of reference, everybody can be controlled in the same way. Jay Digg says Bart Sibrel has the same theories about a secret space program. See, Bart Sibrel is the guy who's known for debunking the moon. He got punched in the face by an astronaut. So if anybody would know, it's him. Oh, he's a true skeptic, right? Nope, he believes in secret spacecraft like we've never seen. So he replaced the stuff that we're supposed to believe, which is debunkable, for something that is not believable. And this is MS, this is classic. Do you remember when I said that the general public is right up nose against the screen and they believe what they see? And the people who dig deeper step through the screen into dream worlds? Bart Sibrel is in a dream world. He said, oh, that screen, that's showing me something fake. I'm going to dig deeper. He steps through the screen into, now I believe in aliens and secret space and anti-gravitation things and flying saucers. How did that happen? It's because instead of rejecting the screen and stepping back, instead of taking the subtractive view of the auto hoaxer and including fakeability in his assessment, he stepped forward. And I call that MSM plus. You go with the screen and you add, oh, there's a fire in Hawaii. Let me step through the screen because there's more to it. Oh, it was space lasers. And now there's missing children. What a scary world we live in. I'm going to go cry about it on TikTok. See, you entered a nightmare and it upset your feelings. I, on the other hand, and my friends, we're all like, no, look who's presenting this, and it's a screen. Remember, it's a filter, it's not a window. So we step back and we say, let's look at the facts. Couldn't find any. It's always like that. I'm not in their dream world. When I say that the auto hoaxer perspective represents the only legitimate objectivists in the world, the only legitimate form of objectivism, like I'm 100% serious. The objectivist society is a cult of NASAtologists. Doesn't matter if they can be objective about everything else. Their frame of reference goes through that same screen. They're mind controlled. Infinite Muse says the whole "we lost the technology" should say it's all a joke. Yes. And when it comes to the space program, and we're going to do a cyber symposium in September on the space station, I have a plan. My plan is to take this think tank and just literally just shoot it out of the sky figuratively. And we're going to do that. We're going to bring down the ISS in the minds of the believers. It all just does seem like a bad joke. But most of what will bring it down is not what they show you, which is like a magic show. If you're sitting in the chair and you're looking at the stage, you can't debunk it from your perspective. That's how optical illusions work. And I think when it comes to things like the space program in general, we have to remember that that's a very curated view. What's going to give it away as a hoax is that which they don't show you, but should be there. And I think there's a number of holes in their story that I want to present in a more organized context. And I think this is devastating stuff. And I am going to be using our conference room here to invite subject matter experts. I have a couple of video editing experts who are going to offer their expert opinion, and you're going to see that if somebody's told, this is like an experiment, honestly. If you tell a professional video editor that you need some help determining whether something's real or fake, and you give them a few clips, they will tell you unerringly which one is real, which one is fake, because you're paying them. Yet, if you tell them in advance, hey, will you tell me if these are real or fake? These ones are from NASA. They won't even process the NASA stuff as anything other than real. It's about context and frame of reference. And they have managed to get people to look at NASA and the news media itself as just 100% authoritative. No questions. And Bart Sibrel, therefore, with his "something funny happened on the way to the moon," was just doing damage control. Classic guardrail. It's like, oh, if anybody knows it's him, let's interview him. Well, no, that's someone who is, look, and he's one of two things. One, he's an insulated dupe, or two, he's one of them. One or the other. And if he's one of them, well, you know what that means. He's basically just a soulless crisis actor. If he's not one of them, and he's a dupe, then he's not a leader, one. And then two, if he's confronted with the truth and rejects it, then you make your assessment as to what you're dealing with. J. Diggs says you could say Mick West. Oh, yeah, let me bring that up too. Mick West is a good example. Metabunk. So Mick West can debunk UFOs all day. He can look at photographs and say, oh, that's fake. This is fakeable. He'll recognize it's fakeable. But then will he turn that same level of critical inquiry to the ISS or Starlink or Mousegate? No, it shuts off. So the question is there some kind of internal thought cop that's been implanted? Or is it just money? Is there some incentive? Or are some of these people lying to themselves on a level that they don't even know? Like, I'm not sure, because I don't lie to myself. I don't 2 + 2 = 5 myself just to blend in with the crowd. You know, like the Emperor's New Clothes thing, where everybody says they see clothes, so I'm going to go along with it because I don't want to be outgrouped. It's like, well, yeah, please outgroup me. Off-world stage me. I'm not asking to breathe your air or to be included in your simulations. But they don't give us options. And I think that's one of the things that has galvanized this parallel media concept, is that 2020 displayed that they don't give you room to disagree. There's no opt-out. No, they pay you. They give you a stimmy. There's no opt-out from the mind control. And the best they can do is appease you with a small check so you can pay for Netflix or whatever. All right, let's go through your comments. Linda Curtis says they may have blinded them with science, but will awaken them with logic. Yes, definitely. There's a word that I use, scientism, to denote when someone's concept of what science is really been relegated to believing state-appointed scientists instead of knowing what's true based on the data. Huge difference. Fundamental difference. Like the idea of settled science has a corollary with settled media. And people think, oh, if it was debunked, it would have been exposed. Or they believe 100% of the news they didn't watch. They just assume, oh, if it was fake, somebody would have called it out. No, that's actually never the case. Again, if you just got here, the AutoHoaxology 101 texts have arrived. I'm going to make a few slight changes, but these initial orders finance the whole production, and I needed these as background, as props, as content for the interviewers to look over, because this is going to be the basis of our discussions. And even before I had any interested media in what we're doing contacting me, I was already preparing the interviews. Like I said earlier, just by coincidence, I was already working on a video project where I was writing interview questions and preparing my answers. And I was working with local reporters, and we were going to start production early September or this week, depending on where I was at. And now we have this company from, or this news agency that's going to be over here in the office, and I have these physical copies, which will be signed and sent out immediately after. I do need to have them here just because these are going to be an important part of the discussion, and they need to see that this is indeed it's a cult. It's scalable. The fact that it has a quote, a Bible, a book, a set of things that we all agree upon as far as our operating systems, this to me is one of the main reasons why I think it's important to have this conversation anyway, because I'm trying to dispel the idea that conspiracy theorists are confused, or we're all in their dream world believing wacky things because we don't trust the screen. And I'm saying, no, that's the polar opposite of us, to be honest. It's kind of interesting how it works, but you have to realize that the mainstream media's version of reality consists of conspiracy theories. But they don't call it that. They call it progressivism. They call it liberalism. But those are all conspiracy theory based. From climate change to mass shooters, these things are all fake. But the more extreme version of it goes deeper into the dream world. As I've been saying, they go deeper into it, and they believe, and it's on the left and right, woke or red pill. The people who question the fundamental tend to go extreme. Extremely left, extremely right is both, if you ask me, these are both deeper levels of programming. That's why I called the book, the previous one, the World Stage Deprogramming Guide, because I think it's really about recognizing the existence of the stage. And the stage is that which comes into your mind through that screen. It's the general agreed upon stage or consensus worldview. Now, the conspiracy theorist label and all that stuff, we talk about this endlessly. They changed it to conspiracist and everything. But what I'm arguing for here is that what we represent is actually skepticism. True skepticism, suspension of judgment. And, from this perspective, I think we have the high ground, the moral and intellectual high ground when it comes to this, because it's not like there's no consequences for mindlessly believing and following along with this stuff. You may say, oh, you guys are just contrarian. You're doing it for the money. You're a conspiracist. Well, what are you? You're a blind faith believer in a system that believes in systematically traumatizing children with hyper-realistic school shooting drills for political purposes, to fill their worlds, to fill their worldview with shooters, with threats that don't exist. So who has the moral high ground? The ones who aid and abet the psychological torture of children, or us? I think we're doing better on that level. When it comes to intellectual high ground, well, the people who don't know how media works, the people who operate out of ignorance or consensus trance, aren't using their minds. They're being led by their emotions, so they lose there as well. Yeah, phones are open. The number's on the screen. It is 505 349 0420. I haven't sent out live stream notifications. This wasn't exactly planned, but the books came in and I had to drop them off here at the studio at the headquarters, and I realized, you know what, this is probably I got to bring this up too. They asked me if I can bring other people. They want to talk to others as well. So if you're in the Albuquerque area, or you can be by September the 4th, then by all means get in touch. The address is public, it's easy to find, but I'm going to arrange something. Like, in other words, we're going to have the first IPS headquarters meetup. And I realize it's on short notice and can't expect very many to show. Although on that day we will be doing a live stream, probably around the same time. And it will be filmed by the news company, and they're going to, because they want to observe how we operate. Okay, IPS HQ Meetup 9/4/2023. Big newspaper out of Europe is doing a story on people who make a living spreading conspiracy theories. I won't name them now. Too many of my haters can aggressively sabotage, etc. But here's what they said. They would like to talk to others as well and ask that I invite others. So if you can make it here on 9/4 or know someone who would, let them know. The crew will be here from 9 to 9. We're going to work out a few more details on locations, but we're going to meet at the IPS headquarters. This will be the opportunity we need to launch the Autohoaxology 101 text, and the publicity overall will boost our visibility, which will help us get back to and exceed our previous numbers. And then, most importantly, I think we're going to launch the tabloid and activate the reporters. So what I'm doing with the reporters, and I haven't been too explicit with any of this because sabotage, we have to, just operational security, but we're using the reporters to distribute a free version, an abbreviated version of the tabloid, a promo version. So if you're a press pass carrying reporter and you want to be a distribution node, all you have to do is let me know, and when I order the big batch, I'm going to be sending them all over the place to whoever wants to distribute these. And in order to make it cost effective, these ones are going to be smaller, and they're going to contain teasers for every article with QR codes to see it online or order the full version. So I'm operating off of the freemium version. So instead of trying to build subscribers, which would only be an echo chamber, because there's the only people who would know about it are people like you and I. But when we distribute it through in lieu of, or possibly even with business cards, if we distribute this, it becomes the calling card. And we will work out formal distribution at various newspaper outlets, comic shops, or wherever, dispensaries. But my point is, a lot of places are open to free monthly or weekly papers, and I have a few ideas for how to implement this, but specifically this will be done through our press pass carrying reporters. You'll see in the first copies that come out the utility of it all, and we're going to use it to build the network, to build the infinite parallel media. And I say parallel because we're not anti-media, we exist with it. It's like you can't just be against it and think you can bury your head in the sand. It's part of our environment, and part of situational awareness is knowing what everyone is brainwashed to think, to feel, how they're brainwashed to react. I like to know the playing field. Got a support here from, thank you very much, Frederick. Appreciate the support. Let's see if there's any notes on it. He says, cheers. All right, well, hey, thanks for this again, because this is all going into setting the stage for Monday. And the reason we're doing this isn't to be accepted in the mainstream. The reason we're doing this isn't to curry favor. It's because we need to exist in the meat-verse as much as we exist in the metaverse. And as of this particular publication, we will exist, because they've managed to blacklist us, to block us, to censor us. How many dozens of channels did they burn? Books, they've banned books. In fact, I was actually selling that Flat Earth Activist book a while back, and it was literally paying my rent for like months and months. It was actually selling pretty well. But then one day I got this notice from Amazon, and they said, it has too many spelling errors you need to fix before we can put it back in circulation. And the spelling errors were words that we made up, like glober, globe exit, flat smack. For example, so I'm just saying it was a targeted hit, and they've always done this. And so this is like an opportunity to kind of get back to where the platform should have been from the very get-go. And I have a million ideas here. I mean, it's this whole tabloid, South Park, all of our projects. We have so many things that have been somewhat stultified. So we're kind of cracking that dam. Yes, Europe too. If you have a press pass spirit, we want press pass carriers everywhere, and I want to distribute this thing everywhere. In fact, the printer is in the UK. T-Dog135 says, Alex Jones said the only way to save yourself from breathing in the variant is to wear a spacesuit. Didn't I say this in 2020? I said PPE is conditioning you for a spacesuit. It's part of conditioning you that you cannot live in this world. You're alien to it. It's inimical to your survival and vice versa. And you have to wear a body condom to protect Mother Earth. And yep, that's what people are doing. The fact that Jones would say that means that Jones walked through the monolith. Okay, now, in Space Odyssey 2001, David Bowman merges with the monolith. What does that all mean? I think the movie was about our new age, the space age. And the space age isn't about when we go to these other planets. The space age is about their control of our inner space, our minds. And so the idea of merging with the monolith to me is quite literally taking their screen at face value, or worse, like Alex Jones, walking through it, entering the dream world. And it's not just the conspiracy theorists in the dream world. It's the far left. It's the Antifas. It's the radical fringes on both sides of the political horseshoe. Red pill and woke. They're essentially in the same boat, or identical. They're in identical predicaments. And what do they do at that point? When they get into the matrix that deep, they look around and they say, well, this is the real world. And this is the false awakening. So the red pill false awakening has them thinking, we're in the real world. No one else goes deep enough. They're up to the screen, but they didn't go all the way through. And so they want to pull people through, thinking that they're dragging them out of the matrix. Like Alex Jones is pulling people out of the matrix. No, he's pulling you in deeper. He's dragging you in deeper, into a deeper level of mind control, where now your obsession is red versus blue, a false dialectic. Oh, those blue people are asleep. I'm awake. Well, no, they're dreaming, and they're having a lovely time, and they resent your attempts to awaken them. You are having a nightmare, and you're trying to get them to join you in your nightmare because you feel like the nightmare is real. And I'm saying that the dream is fake, and the nightmare version is on the fringe to keep you from leaving altogether. Spirit Jordak says the Apple TV show Invasion uses David Bowie music and poster. David Bowie, Space Oddity. It parallels Space Odyssey. He's the Starman, man who fell to Earth. He's, again, correlating with David Bowman. David Bowie's a stage name. David Bowie, David Bowman. There's some dispute as to the origin of the name David Bowie, but I think they don't want to be too obvious. Because everything about David Bowie's career has a direct correlation to our paradigm shift into the space age. Even Elon Musk sending the Tesla Roadster into space with a David Bowie effigy in it, with a David Bowie song playing, Starman. Yeah, that was representing this collective immersion into this dream world. Okay, continuing. Salty says, dream or nightmare, it doesn't matter, you're still asleep. Yeah, the red pill is a false awakening, and the woke is a false awakening. Each of these are alternative perspectives of the world stage, catering to the fringe left and the fringe right. And what's also notable about this is that the woke sees the fringe right as their main enemy. And they see the dreamers as ignorant people who need to wake up. The other side of the stage, the red pill, their focus is on the woke, the fringe left. So what happens is The fringes go into the deeper level of programming. Everything's more intense, more immediate, more apocalyptic, and they face the center. And they're staring at each other across the vast field of blue pill brainwashees, and they're competing. Who can drag in the most to their fringe? It's like that game, Hungry Hungry Hippos. Like they're all just hungrily just trying to grab these people and drag them into their nightmare. And these are all false awakenings. The only truth is to be found in objectivity, which doesn't exist on the world stage, left or right. There's some levels of it, but it disappears at certain points when you reach your level of security clearance. And if you look at this lie world order structure as a pyramid, the masses on the bottom, yeah, we're mostly just beliefs, but every level up, you know a little more about how the world works. And it's probably a huge ego boost for a lot of these sellouts to get elevated a little bit. Oh, so you know now that FEMA fakes things for political control. Wow. And that's like enough for some people. They think that they're elite now. It's like, well, you don't know that they fake space or that viruses are, you know, the whole thing. Levels, depending on need to know basis. You can't let one person know it all, or people at different levels. It might conflict with their programming or their morals. Like, for example, I think that Neil deGrasse Tyson is a dupe. I don't think he's a liar. He's lying, but he's an unwitting, honest liar. I don't think he's dishonest about it at all. I think his heart's in the right place. But as they say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And I think that if he knew it was all fake, he wouldn't be so convincing. He wouldn't be able to passionately defend his BS if he didn't really believe it. By the way, there will be a massive test of the emergency alert system on 10/4. All TVs, all radios, all mobile phones. Now, a lot of the QAnoners are going to be really happy about this because they think that they're going to get to watch 10 days nonstop Democrats getting decapitated by Donald Trump's white hat army. That's what they think. They've been praying to JFK for some kind of emergency alert where we find out the truth about everything on TV and no one can deny it. They've been waiting for this message for a long time. And it makes me think about the biblical promise of an apocalypse where, yeah, at some point, God's going to show himself and everything's going to be revealed. And then your life won't suck anymore. Just more hopium. So they're actually, but my point of it is this. How sick is it that they hope that this emergency alert is for something real that changes the world? They're hoping for an emergency. It's doom hope. I'm not in the state of doom hope. I'm not hoping for an end. Okay, we talked a little bit about Stanley Kubrick's book, rather his movie, The Shining, and Stephen King's book, Dr. Sleep, a follow-up to The Shining, about a girl born in 2001 who, as a baby, predicts 9/11. Very interesting. Again, it's interesting simply because the movie The Shining happens to predict 9/11 in many different scenes. Spirit Jordic says, in Back to the Future, the clock stopped at 10:04. Okay, yeah, 10:04. There you go. There's probably a million reasons why it's a very significant date. It's going to be another one of those days. Although 9/23 is first. 9/23 is the next big date. It's been a doomsday since 2016, 2017. Hasn't happened yet. Anytime somebody tells me that the world's going to end, I ask them to just lend me their car, and they never do. Let me play this clip.
Next thing you know, all people just dropping out the building. I counted like at least 33 people dropping from just this side of the building. I can imagine what happened on the other side. And I'm just glad that none of my family in there. That's what I know.
Are you fucking still on or what?
Now, if you didn't catch that, this 9/11 witness saw 33 jumpers.
Next thing you know, all people just dropping out the building. I counted like at least 33 people dropping.
I counted 33. Interesting. Now, it's just a coincidence, as you all know. These are all coincidences. You know it's a coincidence that Buzz Aldrin got paid $33 to go to the moon? He was reimbursed $33. It's a coincidence that they all wear the X-33 watch. It's another coincidence. Mach 33? Yeah, coincidence. I get a lot of flack for pointing that one out. And they're like, you just made that number up. I show them the number. And they're like, no, they went Mach 22.596. Like, I think you're missing the point here. And I can't tell if they're being deliberately obtuse or if it's just the programming is that powerful. And if it is, then we're dealing with a lot of mind control victims. I saw this very heartwarming video here. So a lot of people are convoying to go to Burning Man for that orgy in the desert where there's no showers with a bunch of sweaty leftists. It's basically like the right-wing version of the Bohemian Grove, but it's out in the desert, the Burning Man. They do it at Black Rock City, very significant name. Burning Man, Phoenix, Black Rock, 33 consecutive Burning Mans ending in 2020. Fascinating story. At the final Burning Man of that sequence up until 2019, before they paused, a 33-year-old was found dead at Black Rock City. Again, 33rd Burning Man, 33-year-old found dead in Black Rock City. And then it goes on. It goes on. You can correlate this to the Black Monday market crashes of 87 and 2016. It's all symbolism. It's all telling stories in advance. Just like in 2019, there was a 33-year-old who set himself on fire in front of the White House with the USA shirt. It was caught on TMZ. A guy with a USA shirt on fire. And this was the same year as a guy died in Black Rock City, months apart. And what's more, 33 years before the 2019 incineration of that man, the year of the first Burning Man festival, a Burning Man happened. A man set himself on fire in front of the Reagan White House, and it was another 33-year-old. Again, believe it or not, but there were two 33-year-olds, 33 years apart, 86 and 2019, that set themselves on fire at the Ellipse. You have the Burning Man festivals starting in 86, running till 2019, bookended at the very end by a 33-year-old mysteriously turning up dead. And then 87 and 2020, you had these 33-year spaced apart Black Monday market crashes. And what I found here is that there's a correlation between the market crash, Black Rock City, where the Burning Man happens, and the number 33. Fascinatingly, on 3/16/2020, when season 2 of Black Monday, a TV show, started, that's when the market crash happened. Well, Black Monday is a TV series about the 1987 crash. So on the season 2 of that series, we actually lived through the second Black Monday crash. It's sort of a 9/11ing of the economy. The Dow Jones Industrial went down 3,000 points, a very 9/11-y number. Yesterday was the 68th anniversary of Emmett Till's death. He was lynched, and that kicked off the civil rights, which came back. The whole thing kind of was reinvigorated by the death of Trayvon Martin. But this is an interesting one because he was lynched because of a proto-Karen. A Carolyn Dunham went Karen on him for hitting on her or saying something about her appearance, and he was supposedly tortured and killed. Now, I've seen the photo of him in his coffin because the family said people need to see this to affect social change. So his face, this martyr, Emmett Till, is what really galvanized the civil rights movement. The thing is, it looked fake. I'm just saying, it looked fake. My point of it is, we're looking at martyrs, though. So here we are 68 years later, and this is being brought up again because of present events. And then just yesterday they had that Dollar General shooting, which was done by a white supremacist, according to the police chief who read all of his manifestos. So they love to bring out these martyrs and then associate them with the present day. And I was just listening to a Daily Beast podcast, and they're very upset that people have put Martin Luther King next to Donald Trump. So you have MLK, Emmett Till, then you have Martin Luther King and Trump. What does Trump have to do with any of it? Well, on the 55th anniversary of MLK's assassination, Trump was arraigned on 4/4, and he has since been compared to Moses by the MAGAs. And the Make America Great Again, well, MAGA is the promised land when America is made great again. Just part of the association here. My point is, they take these martyrs and they associate them, and it brings these emotions, it brings these stories into the conversation. Super disingenuous. Here's a quote from Aldous Huxley I found interesting. There will be in the next generation or so a pharmacological method. Now, before I go further here, well, we'll just read it all the way through. Because Aldous Huxley, Brave New World, we're talking about the sea of irrelevance, and he's the one who coined that phrase. There will be many in the next generation or so, or there will be in the next generation, a method for making people love their servitude and producing dictatorship without tears, producing a kind of painless concentration camp for entire societies. So people will have their liberties taken away, but will enjoy it. Doesn't this just sound 100% like the movie The Village, where the communists born into the commune don't know? They don't realize that it's not the 19th century, that they're being kept back 100 years, that they're isolated and quarantined. No, they love it. They sing the songs. They're part of their community. They're happy. What Huxley goes on to say is, they will be distracted from any desire to rebel by the propaganda and the brainwashing enhanced by pharmacological methods. This is the final revolution. And I would say it succeeded. That with the advent of the nuclear bomb, 1946, they managed to put such an egregious threat in all of our faces that it put mankind into a hostage situation, a circular firing squad, collective hostage situation. It redefined geopolitics, and what it also changed was the game board itself, to where, because of this, they have the ultimate power to define our reality, because we accepted the premise that they have this power. It's like they introduced a God that we all suddenly believe in. But they have arrogated unto themselves that much power, and we gave it to them. And I would say this was a revolution, because what they did with the nuke in 1946 with the tests is, when they split the atom or whatever, you know what they really did is they obliterated reality. All of it. Objective reality was obliterated, and we were moved into the dream world. That was a revolution against the mind, against cognition. That's why I say we're in a state of philosophical crisis, but we've been born into it with a healthy dose of Stockholm Syndrome. All right, going through your comments here. Yes, Infant Mew says COVID-33 will be a real doozy. Yeah, I'd like to think that we wouldn't fall for something or people wouldn't go along with it, but we'll see. I'm of the opinion that disease X is Twitter. That the X represents what's coming next. And when Musk had the glowing cross on Twitter, that was a reference to Constantine and his desire to unite the empire under the sign of the cross. And right now, we are being united under this new religion, the monolithic religion. And its symbol is the cross, the X. And what Musk did with X is he put the dome over it, rate limitations, made it a closed system, and he talked about it being the everything app, like including everything, including finances. But the whole point of it is, it's about consolidation. And that before we can have a perfect Bible for this new age, like Constantine and the idea of the Bible having to be curated and approved for a version, we're reaching that right now. And the new Bible, of course, is this monolith. It's this screened reality. But leading up to it, they have to go through this entire censorship agenda in order to perfect it. But that's what they're working on. And I think the way they're going to get the public to acquiesce to it is they're going to say, hey, look, because of what Musk did with X, he got rid of the block feature. He let the haters and the QAnons and the conspiracy theorists run wild. We broke the internet. So disease X is going to be some kind of internet crisis. And I'm not thinking it's going to be computer viruses. I'm thinking mind viruses. And you know what's also interesting about all of this? Think about the pandemic model, how you treat it, and the role of Bill Gates. So virus, quarantine, the version of the vax has to be updated to deal with this particular virus. And then think about computer viruses. Same problem and the threat that they possibly represent. Now, you go back a little further. The Microsoft Word, the idea of Microsoft Word, word processor, it's just a word processor, but look at the inventor of it, Richard Brody. Richard Brody wrote the book Virus of the Mind, where he set the premise of mimetic engineering, or how you can catch ideas. You can catch a mind virus. His whole premise was that words are viruses. So I don't think it's a coincidence that Microsoft Word's creator wrote the book, really a seminal book on mind viruses, that sets the premise that memes are analogous to viruses, and we must exercise meme control. So this premise for thought control was actually established with the advent of the pseudoscience of memetics, and the fact that it was the guy behind Word is very pertinent. Microsoft Word, mind viruses. There's a strong correlation there, but it's intentional. This conflating of lingo for describing epidemiology and pandemics and describing political speech. They get people to accept things, ideas, and concepts in the entertainment, and then they implement it later. Jay Diggs says, the movie Songbird came out at the end of 2020, took place in 2024, and the world was in lockdown for 2023. Yep, I recall that. Now, there's something someone said, the movie Stray, and I haven't watched it yet, some movie about talking dogs, but what was said in this comment was that there's a bit of graffiti in the background on one of the scenes that says it's a psyop, and it's on top of a mushroom cloud. So I interpret that as predictive in some way. And if you remember, the game Call of Duty said hoax. The virus is a hoax. Like these little clues, these little Easter eggs. So it just wouldn't surprise me at all, if the next thing on the agenda is using high altitude nukes, EMPs, blackouts, and fallout. I think fallout is the next lockdown excuse. I think they could make that happen faster than a virus, and it's not as partisan. You can't not believe in fallout. You might believe that your political opponents are behind it, but you're going to accept the threat. And there's a movie called The Humanity Bureau with Nicolas Cage about a future where mankind is locked down because of nuclear fallout. And what he finds out is he gets his hands on a Geiger counter, which is a banned item. It's contraband. You're not supposed to be able to test this stuff for yourself. And what he finds is that they were lying. The government lied in order to keep people locked down. This came out in 2017. So here you have, his name is Cross, and what he finds out is this. They evade the Bureau and make it to the nuclear power plant, which they were warned was highly irradiated. Their Geiger counter reveals there's no radiation. It was a scare tactic to keep people from fleeing to the north. So imagine that. This is, of course, this is science fiction. But imagine the government using fake nuclear fallout to lock down entire sections of the world. Obviously, it's science fiction. Who would fall for that? Infinite Muse says, you will own nothing and be happy is a powerful suggestion mantra. It's hypnosis. Yes. Yes, that is a key point there as well. I do believe in mind viruses, but I think they only exist for people that don't critically think. Like, I think you can catch ideas through osmosis, through apathy, through not willfully dismissing it, and they do become beliefs. And that's the premise of mind virus, or virus of the mind, is that you can have these idea constructs that do in fact spread analogous to a virus. But I think that only happens when you don't critically process it, which is what we're doing when we analyze the news. Virus of the Mind, New Science of the Meme, written by a computer programmer. Fascinating stuff. No, this is the one. No, Virus of the Mind was written by Dawkins. The one I'm thinking of is, I'll see if I can find it. The one with Richard Brody, but the guy who invented Word. Did he just coin the term? Virus of the Mind, Richard Brody carefully builds. Here it is. Memetics is the science of memes. the invisible but very real DNA of human society. Richard Brody is best known as the original author of Microsoft Word. The Virus of the Mind essay by Richard Dawkins. And I was reading The God Delusion by Richard Dawkins, and I stopped reading at about page 350. And I stopped reading because he dedicated a few pages to making an argument that it would be better to be abused by a priest than to be raised religious. No, it's better. Oh, he said that being abused wasn't as bad as being brought up with a religious belief system. He actually made the argument that, and he even alluded to his own experiences at his schools where he was brought up, where the priests were very abusive, but he minimized it. So I stopped reading his work because I'm like, I'm not going to listen to someone who's going to make these inhuman arguments just because he has vitriol for organized religion. Like, I have no love for organized mind control, but that level of argumentation or minimizing abuse like that just really struck me as kind of a strange and out of place. That's Richard Dawkins. If you haven't read The God Delusion, Jay Diggs says Will Ferrell is the voice of the main dog in the movie. His name is Reggie. Reggie. Yeah, and Reggie means king, like Reggie Gray, hitting people on the heads in that Alabama fight. He's 42, like Rosa Parks, who had her own civil rights struggle 50 some years before over a chair. And I think that connects pretty well. You know, Reggie Gray and the chair hitting on the head. I think that thematically ties in with a few things because Reggie means king, and it was the Rodney King beating, hit 33 times. I'm not sure if it's all on his head, but the Rodney King beating prompted the LA riots, which ended up with Reginald Denny getting hit in the head. Reginald Denny was 33. Rodney King hit 33 times. You can look this stuff up. It's very clear when these psyops are psyops. The number codes tend to give it away, and this fictional universe tends to integrate all of their stories together. I may watch the movie, though. I did watch They Cloned Tyrone with Jamie Foxx. We talked about the significance of Jamie Foxx with the BLM, with the bigger psychological warfare, the martyrdom cult, his own death and resurrection earlier this spring, rumors of his own cloning before a movie, Tyrone Got Cloned, came out with him in it. And I think the name Tyrone connects with Tyree Nichols and that psyop from earlier in the year, which was actually stylized to look like the Rodney King beating. They do reference and create this entire mythology. They do reference all of these older events and they bring them back up. In fact, I didn't show it yesterday, but I have an image I posted on my Twitter juxtaposing the Rodney King beating with the Tyree Nichols beating. And as you'll see, same director, or rather, it's a nod to the previous beating. It wasn't as savage, and I remember the news reporters at the time insisted that it was so violent, it was so brutal that you shouldn't watch it. That it's just like it's so shocking. So I watch it, and I'm like, you know, this is not even a quarter as bad as the Rodney King beating. Like, they couldn't produce the same effect, but they wanted you to think so. They set your expectations. Some reporters even said that they got nauseous and threw up upon seeing it, that it was so bad. And we watched that video of Tyree Nichols' beating, and it looked like a hazing. It looked like slap boxing. It looked like WWE. It did not look like a real beating. All right, let's see here. We talked about the 10-4 emergency broadcast. We discussed the Dr. Sleep book, where Stephen King has a character predicting 9/11, the sequel to The Shining, which happens to, in the movie form at least, connect The Shining with 9/11. We talked a little bit about the symbolism in The Shining that connects to 9/11, as well as symbolism from Space Odyssey and the meaning of the monolith, which again, the monolith is the monolithic control over media. It's the capstone in the pyramid. It's the one perspective that everyone has to adopt, the all-seeing lens. It's Big Brother's viewfinder, if you want to look at it that way. Yep, U.S. government reimbursed Buzz Aldrin $33 for his trip to the moon in 1969. SpaceX conducts epic 33-engine Starship test. And they do wear X-33. It's the Mach 33 collection, or the X-33 watches. And then I showed images of the realistic model of the moon that NASA paid millions for in the 60s, which refutes the claim that they didn't have the technology to fake a moon landing. Because if you can fake it realistically with models on camera, you can fake it in the movies or on TV. Then you have this. Again, the make-believe moon landings were all rehearsed in realistic simulations and simulators. NASAtologists will say they couldn't have faked it in the 60s. Yeah, they could have. They did. Here it is. The command module simulator was used at the Kennedy Space Center to train Apollo astronauts. This was used in conjunction with the lunar module simulator. The simulated command module was patterned after the actual spacecraft. Now, this is very interesting. It says realism was maintained by simulating all aspects of the flight that they would encounter, including sounds, failures, fire, life support, and food prep. 3 simulation engineers conducted the training missions and had capacity to insert malfunctions to enhance training. So to me, this is a huge part of how they do PSYOPs, drills. The drill is just a rehearsal and a rehearsal. Because if you rehearse it enough, it makes it easier to lie. Because you can say something that's not true. Like I did a lie detector test. I was given a lie detector test when I was in basic training. The base I was at was adjacent to this FBI training center where they train students on the polygraph. And I got out of duty one day by volunteering to be a candidate in one of their studies. And I was given scripts to read about crimes I had committed or lies I was to tell. And so I'm strapped in a chair, and they have all these things hooked up to me, and there's a big window in front where I'm being observed. And they're reading what I was told is, lie detector tests are mostly just reading your body language. That they set a baseline for your anxiety levels, and then they work off that baseline. So I was a subject, a guinea pig, more or less, in a study where they were reading if I was lying or not. So what they told me was, because they gave me some insight into how it worked, I was asking a lot of questions, that a lot of lying is given away in the nonverbal communication, but that people who are good liars rehearse. That's all. Like actors. What is an actor but a liar? They're pretending to be someone they're not, saying things that aren't true, convincingly. And they're able to do so because they rehearse it. So here you have these astronauts who are constantly make-believing all day, all night. So when you ask them, hey, what was it like? They can describe the physical sensations and not be lying. I really noticed this in the book Spaceman by Mike Massissimo, where the entire book is about how he's afraid to swim and how he has to get his scuba diving lessons, and he has to learn how to scuba dive so he can go to space, because that makes total sense, right? And at the end of the book, when he finally goes to space, the final chapter, he talks about it for 2 paragraphs. And he says, yeah, it reminded me of being in the neutral buoyancy lab, floating around in Texas. Like everything he said about space was a reference to being in the swimming pool. And I thought, they probably try to give him a physical basis for this experience that he's claiming to have. And he still couldn't separate the memory from his actual physical basis, which wasn't space, but was in fact a swimming pool where astronauts play at going to space. The Ultimate Omega Speedmaster X. So if you want to know, the watch that they wear to space is called the Omega X33. And I think it ties into the supposed Mach 33. Maybe it ties into this. Freemasonry and the 50th anniversary of lunar landings. This is from the Scottish Rites This is from the Masonic magazine. So you're going to say this is a conspiracy theory. Well, tell the Masons. Anyway, it has a list of the various astronauts who are Masons. I think one of them was in a Masonic lodge in Texas, and I think they put a lodge on the moon, kind of like Richard Byrd put a lodge at the North Pole and the South Pole. John Glenn Jr., 33rd degree, achieved fame as the third American to be launched into space and the first to orbit the Earth. Leroy Gordon Cooper Jr., 33rd degree. Anyway, this is a list of all of the various astronauts. I think it's a fascinating story when you go into the subtext because I think there's something more to it. I think the lunar landing, the Apollo 11, has something to do with the Tower of Babel and the incursion into the heavens. We have a call here. Infinite Plane Radio.
Hello.
Hey, what's up, caller? Do you believe that man went to the moon?
No.
Just
Nope. I wasn't there to confirm it, so what do I know?
Right. Well, what about India? Do you think India's lunar landing was, I don't know.
I heard that somebody was talking about that today, and they said the video was like really bad.
It was good for like 1980s video games graphics. But yeah, bad if you're trying to pass it off as a contemporary moon landing, sure.
So just a quick story in reference to the one-eye thing.
Okay.
A villager went to the river to get dinner. He caught a magical fish. The fish said, "If you let me go, I'll grant you one wish of anything you want." So the villager said, "What should I wish for? A castle? A ship to sail the ocean? Or 100 pounds of gold?" And then the fish said, "There's one caveat. Whatever you wish for, I'm going to grant your neighbor two of." And he said, "Well, if that's the case, poke one of my eyes out."
What? That is a terrible wish. Right, but yeah.
But you get it, dude. Right?
Absolutely.
His neighbor's going to be blind.
Yes. That's I wouldn't want to live next to that person. But there is a mentality though where some people feel like they get ahead when other people fail. And I've always been like, no, you lift everybody up and you kind of, rising tide lifts all boats. But the world we live in, people will pluck out both your eyes if it meant a competitive advantage rather than granting themselves something that would move them forward in some tangible way. Not everyone, but there is that mean streak.
Yeah, the spirit of the world we live in nowadays, or probably was always like that, I guess.
I think so.
It's supposed to be. I don't.
Well, I think what we're seeing here is, it's fascinating to wonder how back this thing goes, but my basis for interpreting any of the psychodrama seems to be its correlation to the astrotheological, the oldest religions, the oldest mythologies, that the flood myth of climate change is as old as the Epic of Gilgamesh, however old that is.
Yeah, Gilgamesh had a flood story too. Like there was a flood story, I think it was Gilgamesh's, before Moses. It was like almost exactly the same as Moses.
Oh yeah. Yeah, this is why I argue against biblical literalism. One, because you can find it to be templated personifications of the astrological cycles. But two, it's all plagiarized. All of it. NASA is a plagiarism of Mystery Babylon. Hey, Jay Diggs asks if you're calling from a supply closet, and Eric of Bear suggests that maybe you're in a clothes dryer.
No, I'm in a brown truck, slanging cardboard.
Okay, well, I hear you loud and clear. They're just curious as to where you're at, because we're everywhere. For all we know, you're in a tunnel beneath Maui looking for the missing children with Tim Ballard, right?
Yep, yep. And that's funny. I went to Maui this year, at the beginning of the year, and when all that went down, I was like, man, I guess I'm glad I went when I did because it's beautiful there. But I was looking at the top of the volcano there, and I saw that military base up there, and it looks pretty extravagant. I mean, it looks pretty extravagant from the bottom. But then I found out it's one of the main things up there is directed energy. I mean, I don't know what that means, but
Interesting.
it's like it's one of the spots in America where that's what they do.
I heard
There's
that
not
if you
many of them, and that's one.
I heard that if you painted your roof blue and signal that you're a Democrat, they wouldn't burn your house down.
Yeah, yeah, they were saying that today. That blue stuff. They were saying that on Jones today. There's anything blue, and then they're like, oh, there's blue T-shirts and burned down houses. And I was like, okay, so the house burned because it wasn't blue, but the T-shirt didn't. But if the house is burning, the laser doesn't need to hit the T-shirt to burn it. The house is going to burn the T-shirt. So and it was Stu Peters talking about it. So it's like, did Stu Peters have somebody go down there
It
and throw some
sounds.
blue shirts in the burnt down houses?
Yeah, Stu Peters will sell blue shirts. This will protect you from dues.
Yeah.
It's like the color specific direct energy weapon is the new race specific bioweapon. They have all
Yeah.
these magical weapons that
Yeah.
don't exist they're scared of. Nama asks if you're UPSing while IPSing.
I can't confirm or deny that, but it's a good guess.
Yeah, I was gonna say don't give away your location. We have people watching us.
But yeah, they say those UPS guys are all rich now.
Yeah, I hadn't
We
heard.
just they just had Yeah, they just had a contract go through, and they're going to be making like $50 an hour now.
Wow, I had to look into it. A side job. That sounds like something I could do.
Yeah,
I mean, I like
you just got to
driving.
learn how to.
I mean, do you get bored? I don't.
Yeah,
When I'm driving, I'm like, I find it.
no, you got to learn how to deal with management. They're like Nazis.
Oh, I see. You see, that's my main
Yeah,
thing. I've always had an issue. I'm not anti-authoritarian, but I've always had an issue with management and being told what to do. That's why I took my morgue job. I was like, I work alone. Nobody wants to do it, and I'm just left to do my job. Nobody's looking over my shoulder. Much better. I cannot stand being micromanaged, but we do what we have to.
as long as you know how to stay off the radar, you basically are doing your own thing.
Yeah.
Because they got everything wired. They got everything literally like wired up where they know speed, if you're stopping fully at stop signs, all that stuff.
Interesting. Well, at the very beginning, I talked about the moon landing being fake and the Kubrick thing. Uh, what's your take on nuclear bombs? Because there was this plan before they landed on the moon to nuke the moon to like flex their strength. But what is your take
Yeah.
on the nuclear bomb? Do you think there's any truth to it, or do you think it's psyop?
I mean, I always thought they were real. But listening to you for a while now, I guess I can't really say that because I've never been there to see one blow up.
Well, they're certainly
You
fake.
know?
They're fakeable. We can make the argument that they are fakeable.
I mean, I definitely think they got stuff that'll blow the shit out of a lot of, like really big explosions. I think they can manipulate really big explosions. I think those are real. Whether they're nukes or regular explosions, I don't know.
Right. Well,
And the directed energy stuff like makes sense to me because it's frequency, and frequency is everything. And depending on how you manipulate frequency, it could be everything's got a good and bad side. So it's like you can manipulate frequency in a good way or in a bad way.
Well, I watched this YouTube video where this individual took a mirror and he cut it into many pieces, and he made one of those solar heaters, those sun heaters, where he has this big dish and he puts all the glass in there, all the mirrors, and then he's able to boil water, heat coffee very quickly with this stuff. And I've heard of birds roasting, flying over these things. I don't know if that's true, passing by like solar panels. But my point is, yeah, there's real stuff, and you can find patents where people are looking into this. But then there's the point where,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
my bad.
we'll have to
Go
question
ahead.
like with Maui, for example. I think the do seems plausible on purpose. So they get half the population thinking something more happened than just climate change. But both sides are debating over the cause, and neither side is saying, well, maybe nothing happened. Maybe this is a controlled demolition, which is what I think. Controlled demo.
Yeah, yeah. I think something happened. Like somebody did some effed up stuff. You know. I mean, I would have to imagine if I was able to get back to Maui and I went north to Lahaina, because where I stayed was south of Lahaina. I'd have to imagine that shit's all roasted up there. But I mean, like you said, maybe it's closed off set.
I think
But I do
closed.
believe in frequency because I can, I could see with my own, like I could do my own stuff and figure out the frequency can be beneficial or not beneficial. You know what I mean? I do believe in that because everything is frequency.
Well, the line is where science becomes science fiction. Like, for example, you could argue that NASA does a ton of science. Most of what they do is science. They have real pilots, they do real aerodynamics, they work with all kinds of technology that is very sophisticated. However, there's a point where their science becomes science fiction, and we don't have the security clearance as civilians to know where that line is. But there is a line. That's why I've been saying for some time that once you cross that Kármán line, 62 miles, it's all CGI. It's all cartoon.
Yeah, yeah.
There's real crime. We all know there's real crime, real deaths, real murders, but then they have the sensationalized versions on TV that they only advertise and promote because they have a specific scapegoat that they're going after.
Yeah. So I mean, that's all I really had.
Cool. Well, hey, I'm glad you called.
I thought that story when you were talking about that stuff, and that's one of my favorite little stories.
About the one eye, about the neighbors and they're poking out of the eyes.
Yeah, I actually got it from a Russian guy, so it must be like really bad story,
Oh wow.
Russian story. It must be terrible.
Yeah, it's
Everything
a
Russian
it's
is
a
terrible.
it's a very sadistic use of a wish, but very interesting story. Anyway, thanks G33 for the call as always.
Yeah, take care, bro.
All right, there's G33, UPSing, well IPSing, cannot confirm or deny. We'll just say we'll just leave it at that. Now, this is what I alluded to. Project A119. It looks like Apollo 11 and a reverse 9/11. And 199, you'll notice there are a number of movies that we talk about, like Donnie Darko, that have themes of stuff falling from the sky that came out on 119. Genesis 119 references the fall of the Tower of Babel. The 119, 9/11 reversed. This number has quite a lot to do with many of these various psyops. But additionally, Project A119 was a project to detonate a nuclear weapon on the moon. During the Cold War, the Soviet took the lead in the space race with Sputnik in October of 1957. Hey, on 10-4. I knew that number was standing out to me, 10-4, the emergency alert they're giving us. On 10-4, Sputnik was the first artificial satellite to orbit the Earth. Following this, NASA wanted to kind of flex their own powers and nuke the moon, but they canceled it in 1959 out of fear of a risk to the population. Oh, they're thinking about you. They were worried about nuclear fallout that could affect future lunar landing projects. So they were going to nuke the moon to win. It's like, oh, if we can't win the race, nobody can. They were going to blow up the moon because the Russians were going to get there first. Air Force Special Weapons Center, Kirtland Air Force Base, New York. In fact, when the news crew comes down here for that interview, I suggested we meet up at the Atomic Museum, which is just down the street a few miles, close to the Air Force Base, and there's a big fake missile out in front, a big dummy missile. Not like the real one that if it fell, it could blow us all up. But no, it's just a dummy. But we have entire monuments to the hoaxery everywhere. Okay, let's see what else is going on here. All right, we have 55 people in chat. We have a number of people over there on Odyssey. Thanks everyone for joining. I didn't send out live notifications, but I will send this out in the archives here shortly. We will likely be live later in about 4 or 5 hours. I'm getting the studio prepared for Monday. I want to say thanks to IFEP-A73. You got the last copy of the hardback of Autohoaxology 101. So we will be back.
You are listening to Infinite Plane Radio. Stick around for live call-in shows. Stay for the music and recent replays. Join us at infiniteplane.live for 24/7 live chat with other listeners.